We just got back from a Saudi Arabia cruise with stops in Jordan and Egypt along the Red Sea. And today, we're going to tell you all you need to know if you want to do this unusual but amazing cruise itinerary.
Stay tuned.
Hi everyone, I'm Rick.
And I'm Andrea. And today we will review our cruise to Saudi Arabia, Jordan and Egypt on board of the MSC Splendida. But first, if you like travel-related videos like this one, now is a great time to subscribe button down below so you'll never miss any future videos.
Excellent advice.
Thank you. Let's start our review by talking about the itinerary. This was a 7-day cruise in the Red Sea. For this itinerary, we start from the Egyptian port of Safaga. From there, we sail to the port of Aqaba in Jordan. We then sail to the first port in Saudi Arabia, Jeddah. After that, we sail to Yanbu in Saudi Arabia. And then we sail to the port of Sokhna in Egypt, before going back to our final destination, the port of Safaga again, for disembarkation. On this particular itinerary, passengers can start their journey also from the port of Jeddah or Sokhna. The itinerary is very interesting, especially because it gives people the opportunity to visit places that were not open for tourism until very, very recently, like Jeddah and Yanbu in Saudi Arabia.
Exactly. And a couple of things to consider before booking this itinerary are the fact that during the 2 days of sailing in Saudi Arabia, there's no alcohol served on board. No champagne! What are you going to do? Also on board, they don't serve pork or any pork products. Yes, lots of bacon burgers.
Yeah, for the whole week.
Well, for 2 days.
No, they don't serve pork for the whole week.
That's right. Finally, we recommend you not to do this sailing during Ramadan because the excursions, well, they send all of their buses to Mecca. So a lot of the excursions are cancelled. Our next topic on our cruise to Saudi Arabia along the Red Sea is getting there.
For this cruise, we used the cruise line to get us to the from and to the ship. And we liked it. Yeah. Unfortunately, though, this option is not very flexible, and we were not able to spend extra days before or after the cruise. Knowing that, we would have known, we'd recommend arranging our flight independently. Just now, some of the ports are not very well connected with major airlines. That said, there's a lot of low-cost airlines like Ryanair or EasyJet in this area that can take you
where you need to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We flew into Hurghada, Egypt, and the cruise line arranged the transfer to the ship in Safaga, about 45 minutes away. So it was a pretty smooth and simple process, other than the delays due to the constant passport checks. More about that later.
And people asking for tips all the time. Our next topic of our Saudi Arabian Red Sea cruise is visas and immigration. Well, let's start talking about Jordan, which was the easiest country in terms of visa and immigration.
Yeah.
Practically, all European and North American passport holders do not need a visa to go to Jordan.
Right.
We're going to leave a link in the description below with all the passport requirements to enter all these countries, by the way. When you are in Jordan, a Jordanian immigration agent in the port collects the passport and attach a barcode to the passport and the cruise card with the same barcode. The day after we left Jordan, our passport was delivered in the cabin before dinner.
Yeah,
very easy and very smooth.
Very smooth.
No problem whatsoever.
No problem. Now, Saudi Arabia also, well, they require a visa for people wanting to go ashore. And again, we'll leave a link in the description with the list of countries that cannot obtain a visa for Saudi Arabia. Now, passengers that do not wish to go out in Saudi Arabia can stay on board the cruise, and there's no visa requirement. Now, there's 2 types of visas for Saudi Arabia that's possible to obtain. The first one is the 96-hour maritime transit visa that costs And this visa is the one that the cruise line suggests you to obtain. Now, we tried to apply for it and found that it was almost impossible. In fact, in order to obtain this particular visa, you have to provide a list of every country you visited in the past 5 years, including the date of entry and exit. For travelers like us, that's just not possible. Now, the second type of visa is the tourist e-visa that it costs approximately $145 and takes only 10 minutes to get. Process is very simple and quick. Now, passengers that did not get the visa prior to departure can do so on the ship and the staff can help. Unfortunately, we saw that the lines were so long to do so, so we recommend you to do this in advance. The immigration in Saudi Arabia was also incredibly simple. The border agent was very welcoming, he was polite, and he was kind. He wanted to see the visa and then stamped the passport, and that was it. In the second port in Saudi Arabia, in Yanbu, they didn't even check our passport at all. No. We were just recommended to keep the passport in our pocket, for the time that we were ashore.
And lastly, we had Egypt. That was very complicated. We applied for the visa online, and it was quite simple and straightforward process.
Okay, that part.
Yes, that part was pretty simple. It took a few hours to obtain the visa, and it cost $60. It can also be obtained at the airport, but we strongly recommend avoiding this because the bureaucracy in Egypt is insane.
Yeah.
Also, we recommended printing several copies of the visa, at least 4, because sometimes the border agent might decide to take one and keep it.
Yeah, this is for Egypt, right?
Yes, Egypt. Now, getting a visa was easy. It was the easy part. Going through immigration is the real pain. In fact, you need to get prepared to have the passport checked and stamped and checked again and stamped again several times.
Yeah.
For example, we had to have the passport stamp at the airport upon arrival.
Normal, right?
Normal. But once we got to the ship, we had to get the passport stamped again. And then the day before arriving in Sokna in Egypt, a border agent came on board and stamped the passport one more time, and the long line to do this were pretty brutal.
Yeah.
In Sokna, before leaving the ship, another agent wanted to see the stamp, and the same day before returning on board, another agent checked the stamp one more time.
Yeah.
The morning after, before disembarking, we had the passport stamp one more time, not only at shore. At the gangway, another agent checked the stamp that we got on board, and then the passport stamped again once arrived at the airport before joining the terminal.
Right.
And then another agent wanted to see the stamp when we passed the security.
Yes.
So I don't even remember how many stamps I got on my passport.
And how many lines we had to wait.
Yeah, because every time there's a long line, and people were losing their patience and they were going crazy. So be prepared, lots of patience. Just deal with it. That's the process. Our next topic of our Saudi Arabia and Red Sea cruise of review is the travel insurance.
Right. So we strongly recommend you to have good travel insurance on any itinerary, and it doesn't matter how old you are. In case something happens. Now, in this case, we bought our travel insurance from the cruise line because it was included in the cruise fare. It was a special that we received. Now, also keep in mind that if you buy the Saudi Arabia Traveler's e-visa, you'll have to buy a mandatory travel insurance from a list of insurance companies provided by the Saudi Travel Authority, and the premium is built into that $145 visa fee. That said, if you want to buy your own travel insurance, we went ahead and left a link for you in the description below. Now, moving on to our next topic on our Saudi Arabia and Red Sea cruise review, let's talk about something a little bit more fun, the excursions.
On this cruise to Saudi Arabia, it's also possible to see some amazing sites like Petra in Jordan and the pyramids in Egypt. But the bus rides from the port to some places are very, very long. Yeah. So keep this in mind when you're booking your excursion. So let's start from Aqaba in Jordan. The port of Aqaba in Jordan is the gateway to Petra. The excursion is quite long, almost 9 hours, but includes lunch. The bus ride is 2.5 hours each way. on a not so great road.
So bumpy, you feel like your bones are gonna fall apart.
But in the bus, there's a bathroom in case you need it. And they do a couple of stops along the way, about 45 minute stops for the bathroom.
Bathroom, stretch your legs.
And, of course, to buy something at a gift shop.
Some of the most expensive
gift shop ever. Even though the bus ride is long and not very comfortable, it's totally worth it. Once in Petra, we had at least 3 hours to explore the site on our own.
Yeah.
We decided to do this on our own, and the tour guide was totally fine with this. He gave us the lunch voucher and told us to be back at the restaurant between 3 and 4 p.m. for lunch. And then, after the lunch buffet, go to the bus by 5 o'clock, and that's it.
Yep.
Other passengers in the group prefer to stay with the guide and follow the tour guide and listen to the tour guide and tell them all about Petra.
Yeah.
We read before, so I was kind of fine.
Yeah. But we loved this excursion very much. In fact, for us, it was the highlight of the trip, and I got to feel a little bit like Indiana Jones. We also noticed that for people with mobility issues, there's golf carts that's available from the site gate to the actual city of Petra. There's also other excursions available in Aqaba, like Wadi Rum, and a friend of ours did this. You know who you are if you're watching, and she loved it. We noticed that a few beach excursions were also available as well. Now, it's also possible to arrange the Petra excursion independently, or others in and around the area. And we'll go ahead and leave a link in the description below for some independent excursions that you can take from Aqaba. Now, if you do decide to go independently, make sure that you're back on time on board the ship for the all-aboard time.
That's very important.
Mm-hmm.
In Jeddah, it is possible to visit the old city, which we did, and we thought was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. We're here with Essa, a beautiful, wonderful tour guide here in Saudi Arabia. What would you say to an American visiting Saudi Arabia?
Oh, I am very happy when you come to my city and explain to you the culture and everything for this area.
So far, we have been welcomed very kindly. You guys have been absolutely wonderful, and it's a very surprising, very nice experience.
Thank you so much, and don't forget for this area in future. You always coming every year, inshallah.
Okay. Thank you.
You okay?
Thank you.
You okay?
They are still restoring most of the sites that are still under repair, but this is still worth it to check. We want to experience the local food, but we did not see any restaurant in the old town for us to go and eat.
Yeah, there was no restaurants in. It was almost like there was no restaurants in Jeddah. I don't know.
Very strange. Another excursion option in the port of Jeddah is to take a flight to another archaeological site called Egra. Still the same people that built Petra built this. Some fellow passengers did it, and they said it was an amazing tour. Also, if you're a Muslim passenger, and you have the opportunity to go to Mecca from the port of Jeddah. Right. But only Muslim can do this excursion.
Right. Now, in Yanbu, the historic city center is just outside the port, and it can be reached in a minute by walking. And we discovered that it's better to go around 5 o'clock because before this time, everything's closed. This is so strange. Now, originally, we booked a beach and snorkeling excursion because this area in Saudi Arabia is supposed to be amazing, but unfortunately it was canceled due to the strong winds. But yet we still enjoyed the stroll in the historic city center, and we did it, a couple of times during the day. Now, we wanted to try some local food again around the port, but unfortunately they only had seafood restaurants, and he doesn't eat seafood. So I thought it would be fun to eat camel meat, which is also a local Saudi delicacy. But it was challenging to find a restaurant that served it in this touristy area. So what we did was we hired a local taxi driver who spoke English and took us to the restaurant, but we discovered that we had to wait until about 1:15 p.m. because everybody had to pray. We also had a lot of difficulties to pay for our food because the restaurant only took Saudi cards or Saudi cash. They didn't know what a Visa card was or didn't take it. Fortunately, our driver was able to pay for us, and then we refunded him. Now, I gotta say, the food was incredible, but I don't know that I would do it again. Just sitting on the floor.
It's a bit advanced.
Eating with your hand.
But we're glad we experienced the local custom and eat like a local. Another excursion that are available from Yambu was the one to visit Medina. We heard from fellow passengers that was not very worth going because it's an extremely long bus ride, and once you're there, most of the site cannot be entered by non-Muslims.
So there's really nothing to see.
Not much to see. You can see the mosque from the outside, but not inside. So in the last port of Sokna is the gateway to Cairo, where almost every excursion revolves around the pyramids combined with lunch and another sites such as Saqqara, the Egyptian Museum, the Nile River Cruise, etc. Unfortunately, we have to admit that this was probably our least favorite stop, for a few reasons. Reason number one, it involves another very long bus ride from the port of Sokna to Cairo. Also, buses have to leave the port in groups, and we had to wait a long time for all the buses to be full before all the buses can leave the port and ready to go. So it was a long...
Yeah, this is the cruise of waiting.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and another thing was that we had to get on and off the bus several times, even just to walk like 5 minutes. And we had to, wait in traffic and more waiting, Yeah. And even at the pyramids, there were people harassing tourists, trying to sell souvenirs. And we even did a camel ride by the pyramids, which at first I thought was amazing, but then we realized that these animals were really poorly treated.
Mm-hmm.
And we noticed that some of the kids that were leading the camels were kicking the poor animals and they were beating them. It was not cool. And we really felt sorry for the camels.
Lastly, we had an armed guard with us all the time, giving us an uneasy feeling because they was there with a gun. It was kind of like...
Yeah, and not a little gun. Like, this was, yeah. All right, so moving on to our next item of our Saudi Arabia and Red Sea cruise review, we explore what to wear. Now, due to the fact that the itinerary was all in Muslim countries, now we were concerned on what to wear when walking around. In particular, we read online that in Saudi Arabia, it was a sign of respect to wear clothes that cover the arms and the knees, especially for women. But in reality, completely different. We saw fellow passengers, both men and women, wearing shorts and short sleeves, and nobody seemed to care.
Not at all.
Now, if you decide to take the Petra excursion, we suggest you to bring a jacket or a sweater, not because of the local custom, but because it gets cold in the Seek. That's the deep canyon that leads the city. Also in Cairo, it's cold early in the morning when the bus leaves, and at night when the bus returns to the ship. So a light jacket or a sweater is recommended.
Absolutely. While continuing our Saudi Arabia and Red Sea cruise review, we'll talk about what to bring with you.
Mm-hmm.
So first thing you have to bring with you are comfortable shoes because there's a lot of walking, especially in Petra. We bought a backpack with us during the long excursion with extra batteries for the cameras and the phones, and jackets and hats. Mm-hmm. Always bring the hat because the sun is quite strong, especially in Cairo and Jeddah. You have the sun right here and you get sunburn quite easy.
Yeah.
And for the same reason, sunscreen is mandatory before leaving the ship. If you go to Petra, it's a good idea to bring a snack with you because lunch might be really late in the afternoon.
Yeah, for us it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, between 3 and 5.
So we buy a couple of bananas and you'll be fine.
Yeah. All right, so our last topic of our Saudi Arabia and Red Sea cruise review is currency. Now, in almost every stop of our cruise, they took dollars and euros. Credit cards worked most of the time. In Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, we were able to pay by credit card, Apple Pay. But we had difficulties in Yanbu because, as we told you before, we went to a very local place. Now, in Egypt, you should bring a lot of small Egyptian pounds for tips because people ask for tips for everything.
Everything, all the time.
Now, in conclusion, the MSC Saudi Arabia and Red Sea itinerary is wonderful, but know that you have to deal with lots of long lines at immigration, boarding, disembarking, and so on. You're going to have to wake up early a lot of times.
Yes.
Because the excursions leave so early in the morning. Other than that, it's a really wonderful opportunity to explore areas of the world that are really not common for tourists, and we are really, really happy we went.
As usual, if you have any question or you need to know something more, leave a comment below. We love to hear from you and answer all your questions. In the meantime, we'll see you in our next video.
Ciao.
Ciao.